committee to order. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Changes to the agenda. We're going to add a report from Ellie Pfeffer on behalf of the case board. She will be reporting probably after we hear from Recycling and Materials Management. We also need to add a member filed resolution that Anna sent us just this morning concerning a law that would amend the state constitution to add a right to clean air and water. So we'll be taking that up later in the agenda. I guess the next thing we've got is minutes approval. Would anybody like to move the minutes of July 27th? Anna moves, Amanda seconds. Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the roll and we'll vote. Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Anna Kelles.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Dave McKenna.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes unanimously. I will keep the chair's report relatively short. I apologize in advance. This might be, I just got a chat from Lynn Leopold that we've got a double sound thing going on. Does anybody know? Is anybody else experiencing that?
No, it sounds fine from this end.
Okay, Lynn, that seems like it's an issue on your end. Do you want to try to rejoin or? Okay, thanks. All right, so back to the chair's report. This is going to seem kind of disorganized today, I guess. Partly because I'm on medication for back pain and partly because we had a lot of last minute additions. So if it gets really messy, I'll just have Dan take over. Letting y'all know that in advance. The only things I want to mention is a thanks to the Water Resources Council for their work on a position description for a water person in DPS. And of course, a thanks to the case board for their work on green workforce development, which we'll hear more about later. Hopefully in the future, we can start doing some work on an energy and climate person's position description. So, county administrator's report. Is anybody here from the county administrator that's going to be giving a report? Oh, don't see any.
Deborah, Martha here. I was earlier today at the highway barn where we've got the lunch celebration for county. Right. Jason might be coming, but he's probably drying off. He was in the dunk tank and got, happily wet. And the Lisa and Amy are both out there. I don't know if they still are, but they were as of about 12:15.
Okay, so whenever somebody gets themselves dried out and signed on, we'll hear from them. We'll just save that for later. Committee members, anything to report? Anna, this might be a good time to talk about your resolution.
I'd be happy to. I apologize for the last minute. I was in a meeting last week with, at the end of last week with Environmental Advocates of New York. And they let me know of an initiative that they have been working on. They let all of us know at Local Progress. In 2019, a bill was passed in both the House and the Senate to add 15 words to the Constitution that ensured the inalienable rights to clean air and clean water. And it needs to pass a second legislative body, which the hope is that it would pass next year because that will be a new legislative body. and then it would go to a referendum in the fall. It passed quite handily in both houses. But this fall, the group of advocacy groups that include EANY is trying to get municipalities and counties to pass a resolution in support of adding this amendment. As I said, 15 words, and those 15 words are listed in quotes at the bottom of the resolution, or at least the language and the intent. It's pretty straightforward. That's the crux of it. It has passed in Interlaken. It has passed in the town of Ulysses. My understanding is that it is being reviewed or is already passed in the town of Ithaca, but they would really like to start getting counties to pass it. And Tompkins County has always taken the lead on these initiatives. So they reached out to me in particular on Friday. So I apologize for getting this to everyone so late, but I'd rather it go through committee instead of a member filed to the full legislature. They will have 2 months to garner full support from counties across the state. And our resolution will certainly help that and will create a template for other counties. So I'm hoping you all will consider it again. I know this is last minute, but as I said, it's pretty straightforward. And the 15 words that would be added to the Constitution are in the bottom of the resolution. There is one whereas statement that I can add, which is a list of other states that have already implemented a green amendment to their constitutions, one of them being Pennsylvania, for example. But I can bring that up once I have word from people whether they want to add that. So that is Pennsylvania and Montana have already passed similar amendments.
That's already in your fourth whereas.
Oh, so I did get that in there. I couldn't remember if I got that in there or not. Okay, good.
Everybody's had a tough weekend.
Yeah.
All right, Kathy, is there any special procedure for a member filed in committee? I can never remember.
No, there was no objection to adding the resolution, so you can just have, make a motion to put it on the table and vote.
Okay, Anna, do you want to move that?
I would love to.
Does anybody want to second it? Amanda, discussion, questions for Anna?
I'm sorry, so we're actually in this resolution right now? Okay,
Yes.
I have not read it yet. I'm not sure what to say. I don't like to vote on things I haven't read. It literally came in an hour ago, right?
Right.
Yeah. Dan. And that is why I apologize for doing it so late. I was able to put it together this morning. I just outlined, summarized what's in it. The whereas statements are primarily, well, as they always are the argument for why it's important. If we want to, Deborah, put it on the table right now and vote on it or discuss it at the end of the meeting, in case that gives people time to review, that is preferable to me.
Okay, we can do that. And
I would just suggest waiting till the end of the meeting, maybe to act on it and put it on the table at that time.
Okay, we'll do that. Do we need to do anything about the motions right now, or just consider that it's on the table and we'll get to it later?
We'll consider that motion withdrawn and then bring it back up later in the meeting.
So was that a motion, just to understand procedure, was that a motion to get it on the agenda, or is that a motion to put it on the table? I thought it was a motion to get it on the agenda.
No, it was a motion to get it on the floor.
Okay.
Okay, like I said, back drugs. We'll move on. Okay, so that brings us to a report from Barb and Nancy about recommendations with respect to replacing single-use plastics and styrofoam.
Okay, well, first of all, it's good to see everybody. And of course, with the delays with COVID and budget, we're here now. The purpose of today is just to let you know what documents we have prepared. And I only asked for 10 minutes on the agenda because the plan would be to bring this forward for more action with a policy recommendation next month. This, just to remind you, the resolution that was passed in January it basically said resolution to limit the purchase of single-use plastic and expanded polystyrene foam items in county government. There was a resolve also that the government intends to transition to purchasing items, to this effect, but further resolved that the county administration will develop an environmental procurement policy with respect to this resolution. So what I've done, and I wanted to first introduce Nancy Webster. I don't know how many of you know Nancy, but Nancy works as a waste reduction and recycling specialist with us. She's also on the Blue Collar Union board and serves on the Health Consortium. Nancy's been with us for what, 7 years, maybe 8 years?
Almost 8, yeah.
Yeah, and Nancy is working with me on a number of special projects that have to do with waste reduction. So we have a couple items in front of you. The first is the report we did that basically outlines the framework for EPP policy and moving forward. So while the committee had expressed interest in these two particular materials, which are of utmost importance, we went back and looked at what we did a decade ago and a resolution that was recommended on EPP products and services, which was never passed by the legislature. It was voted down. And what happened instead was it was incorporated into a waste reduction policy, but it was very minimal. And so what we're doing is, this is the perfect time to bring back the full consideration of all products in county government. And the way I'm talking about this is the policy framework first, and we did an entire research study and prepared a large report with the help of Kat McCarthy, a consultant who had worked with us a decade ago. And then we provided a summary focus on two materials which you have expressed large interest in, the styrofoam and the water bottles. But there are many, many other products and procurement items that we would like to move forward with as part of specific focus in the future. The first item that's entitled Environmental Preferable Procurement Policy Recommendations. Like I said, this is a summary of what we think it's going to take after doing an incredible amount of research around the country of many other programs that are expressed in great detail in a research report that we can share if interested. And of course, the whole idea is to reduce environmental health impacts, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, consider strongly the life cycle analysis of products, increase the use of recyclable material and compostable material in packaging. And we describe the types of things that need to be included. We then talk about, okay, so if we do bring a policy recommendation with the help of Lisa Holmes, on the policy end of things, based on the committee preferences and comments, what happens next? And we describe what we have found in the research and our specific recommendations based on the work that was done over a decade ago, which we saved all of that, about roles and responsibilities on how the work needs to be implemented, the materials and the tools that we would be using, and how we would be reporting out. So that's what we have summarized for you. We also, I thought I had included this on the agenda, but somehow I didn't. It's entitled, the document's entitled Environmentally Preferred Purchasing Product Focus, Water Bottles and Styrofoam. And what that document is summarizing, and again, there was a lot of information in the research and recommendations report on the simple measures that can be taken to either greatly minimize or eliminate these items in county government. And we certainly recommend it. And we did a lot of best practices and benchmarking work. We listed a few in this very short summary. It's very commonly done, and that could be also included as part of the actual policy, you know, that Lisa Holmes and staff would help us to create. So this is just the research, the recommendations, the way I want to approach this in terms of the framework, EPP, policy, and then the focus on a variety of materials, the first being water bottles and styrofoam. One of the things that's really important to note is that, and Nancy, who helped quite a bit with this, found that, you know, in the days of COVID, things have changed in terms of the use of cleaning products, in that it's very common these days to be using products that are not as green oriented, although those are still prevalent, but EPA recommended products that have safety features. Nancy, do you want to add a little bit onto that comment?
Yeah, something that would be part of EPP is using products that are less toxic and that are known to do their job effectively. So, for example, the products that are used within our offices are on the EPA's list of acceptable products that are fit certain safety categories and are known to kill coronavirus or coronaviruses with a certain contact time. And so one very simple step is making sure that people know they can use less of this product if they follow the instructions and let it sit for 2 to 5 minutes so it actually does its job. Then these green products are absolutely as good as more toxic products.
We are talking about, you know, moving forward in September based, you know, with any comments or thoughts or the desire for more information that we have compiled, and you know, a little more direction, and then we are going to implement the procedures. So I want to make sure that you note that in terms of the procedures, I'm talking about forming a team, just like has been done in many other places that have been successful with their policy and procedures and their implementation. It would be a team that would assist with the implementation of the policy called the EPP team. I have outlined some of the potential members. Obviously, this is subject to change. Jason has reviewed this as well. Administration is, of course, going to be involved. But we did this last time. We did have a team. It was very successful. And I have, you know, gone over all that information again. And there's even a draft policy that we're going to use. But in the meantime, it really describes in this what the role of this team is going to be. And I know that at a previous meeting, this committee expressed interest in having a membership. And I also have been talking with Lynn Leopold, who's on the line as well. And of course, Lynn used to work with us for many years. And Lynn, of course, being on the village, is interested in doing something with green purchasing that we're talking about in the village. So of course, the process is, you know, basically moving toward approving a policy in October, studying it, discussing it in September, and then taking action in October. And I think this stepwise fashion will be inclusive so that people don't feel rushed and they have to, you know, address everything all at once. The last item we have in front of you is just a quick summary of the upcoming styrofoam ban for New York State. Nancy, do you want to speak to that for a minute?
Sure, yeah. This is part of the 2021 executive budget, so it was just voted into effect. It would begin January of 2022. And
Nancy, could you speak louder or get closer?
Yeah, for some reason you
Better.
faded out. Yep.
Uh-oh. Now we can't hear you at all.
All right, she'll figure it out. Anyway, I don't know, but all I can say is that we included a short blurb of what's going to happen in the state with styrofoam, and there's going to be a lot of work in the state, not just for, us in county government, but for the rest of, for everyone, in terms of this ban on styrofoam products. Do you have voice, Nance?
maybe now.
Yeah, but not too high, but go ahead, speak loud.
Basically, it's banning takeout containers from distribution and packaging materials from sale in New York State. Because it was just passed, we don't have a lot of guidance as to the nitty-gritty details, but that's the big picture. So there, of course, are exemptions like the styrofoam on raw meat, that's still okay. But things like if you go to a restaurant and you're taking the food away, instead of those clamshells, they will have to be not polystyrene.
So basically, these are the things that are all going to come together. I think it's very exciting that we're taking a lead in county government because, of course, our department, Nancy and I, are going to also be working on the specifics of what it says in that law. We'll be sharing that information with you as soon as we get it, contacting the DEC, and then we're going to implement an education plan and an enforcement plan that will also need to be discussed. So there's a lot here. Okay, that's it for our time. Does anyone have any specific questions or concerns with how we're going to move forward? And the details are going to all come out.
I don't see any from the committee members. Does anybody else have a question?
Amanda has one.
I put my hand up, Deb.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, I've got to go in the participants.
You got to look at your participants. Look for the little blue hand.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Barb and Nancy, for working on this. I was very pleased to know that you continue to do so much, and I found, the documents, lots of good information, and clearly, you've been doing good research. I guess I just want to clarify your next steps. So you're saying in September, you're going to kind of try to form a team, and then
we're actually going to come to you with a draft policy.
Okay. And then, and that you'll work with Lisa on that and kind of get something that takes all of this into account.
Yeah, that's assuming that her schedule is going to allow that time.
Right.
So we have to keep it a little flexible, but I will say I will have a lot more to update you. I am going to the department head meeting with the same documents. I think it's September 9th, so that they understand it. And this process is really important to me, to make sure it's really inclusive, and that we are not going to go 75 miles an hour. But I think it's important for everybody to become familiar with these documents. If the committee would like the research report and the recommendations that we had Kat put together, that would be fine. I also have the samples of resolutions, but I don't think you need that right now. Do you want a copy of the research and the recommendations report?
I would like one. Yeah, I think, Barb, you could just provide that to the committee members, and we would have a month to go through it before.
Which I think is really key for you really to really feel like you understand what's going on before there's going to be any votes. And then I will tell you one more thing, which is we haven't forgotten about plastic bags. That's going to be coming to you next month, because today we received notification that the lawsuit has been settled.
Polypack.
Yeah, it's not clear though. Nancy is going to be reaching out to the DEC contact. We have a really good contact there to learn more about what's going to happen. So, you know, we've got the ban and the education, which we're going to step up again with Jeremy, our communications specialist. And then we've got the 5-cent bag issue, which Jason wants to be very involved in. Amanda and I had a nice chat. I wanted to learn more from her about what the EMC had done before, because what I think is we will write up a plan about it. We have received a check for $5,700 already, and it's been placed in, Rick and Jason and I have made the decision to place it in a special fund in our operating budget for plastic bag plastic bag use for reusable bags. And there's a lot to this because the bags are directed, and Nancy did a lot of research, for low income only. So what I'm planning to do, we know what we want to procure. And I guess, you know, it's going to be my responsibility to do that. And we came up with a recommendation before that's a much less expensive Chico bag, a bag that works really well, that we all have, that can be washed, that can be cleaned, that holds, you know, it has all the criteria. And we are going to procure it. We don't believe it's a bid. We think it's going to be quotes. But the real key to this is the distribution system and what tracking is involved. I'll be reaching out to Kip Gephardt at DSS for some thoughts and suggestions. I'll also be reaching out to Tom Shelley because, again, the EMC might want to play a role, but we need to come up with a sustainable system that allows for the proper distribution and tracking. And Nancy will be overseeing the project down the line when, you know, when we figure out exactly how to implement it. We don't want it to turn into something cumbersome. And we, the Recycling and Management Division department is not going to be in the role of distribution. We may truck some bags over to, you know, some programs in DSS or find out how the EMC can help. But if you have any thoughts or ideas or any, you know, considerations, let us know. Let me know, actually. And that's kind of coming down the pike for September. Just wanted to give you a little preview.
Thanks for that, Barbara. I want to mention that you might consider talking to somebody at the health department because they administer the WIC program, and those would be a demographic that.
Thank you. And I will do that. And we will also, again, I just want to make sure that we are complete in the looking at best practices. I have some friends who are working in New York City in their Department of Sanitation. So we'll try to come up with some ideas for you to consider. But since this is going to lie in our department because nobody else felt they wanted to take this on. And I mean, we'll do what we need to do in our role, but I'm going to do some exploratory work on that as well. Any thoughts, considerations for us?
I have questions from Anna and Amanda. Anna?
I actually this is not specific, Barbara, to what you were just saying. I'll wait to see, you know, what you come up with and everything. I mean, I've been in touch with you a lot about this in the past, so I don't have questions until your work comes forward. But two things. One, the information that you sent us for this month and the resolutions, could you put that all together in a packet in one place and so that we can have it in the peak agenda next month?
I think that would be something Katrina would take care of.
Yep, just wanted to make sure that you send that all to her so that we can review this stuff from this month.
She's all set. Yep.
And then the other question I had was the, I guess in practice, my concern is the exemptions from the PFAS bill that went through the state. And I'm curious if you could talk to us a little bit, Nancy. I'm not sure if you've gotten your sound about what you think about the exemptions, what that will look like in practice.
Let us come back to you. We need to talk about it and study it because we had only planned 10 minutes on this item. But that's a really good question, Anna.
Yeah, I would certainly like to know if that's going to create a major gap.
Okay.
Okay, Amanda.
I was just going to follow up with what Barb was just saying, and I did talk with Tom Shelley and the waste reduction group, and I thought he would have reached out to you by now, but
I know. But I'm so busy anyway, so.
Yeah, so they do have a list, and it includes WIC and Catholic Charities and, you know, all those places. So I think we just need to compile that list.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, I do, but
yeah.
I need to understand, again, what I'm looking for is a sustainable solution, because we're going to keep getting money. We're going to keep doing this to a certain point, with some questions for the DEC about the inevitability of it. And I want to make sure whatever we come up with, what by sustainable, I mean, oh, we have volunteers now, but we won't have them later. And, you know, to really work with both EMC and with the other organizations. Nancy, there was another organization you had suggested. I forgot what you told me earlier, in terms of, but being complete. And I'm certainly looking forward, and I'll reach out to Tom now that this is more on our focus, now that budget has kind of moved.
Okay, that's great. Well,
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you both for doing that.
Thank you for, you know, being involved in this. And I mean, I have to say, all of this stemmed from, you know, in terms of everything we brought forward today, stemmed from that original resolution that you had developed, that you shared with key, you know, leaders and county staff. And we were able to tweak it a little bit, and it's great.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Barb. Thank you, Nancy. And if anybody has any brilliant ideas about things that can help Barb with her bag distribution issues, just send them on by email.
That's a good retirement job, isn't it?
Retirement? What's that? Okay. So now moving on, and we're interjecting a report from Ali Pfeffer and Sarah Collada from the CASE subgroup that's been working on green workforce development. So yes, take it away, ladies.
Hello, my name's Ellie, and I'm a member of the CASE board. And we just wanted to present a brief project report on some work we've been doing in relation to green jobs in the county. So I think I have a presentation that's very brief, sort of an update of what's been going on. And I could share it, or I think it was sent around. I don't know who has sharing privileges right now.
I think you do have sharing privileges, but I'm able to share it too if you'd like.
I can share it. I have it up. Sarah, did you want to introduce yourself as well while I'm getting that up?
Sure, thanks.
Oh, yay.
Sarah Collada, also a member of the Climate and Sustainable Energy Advisory Board.
Great. So we basically formed our committee as COVID was starting, and recognized a green jobs focus as a really great way to bridge the clean energy goals of the county, as well as the economic recovery needs. So we believe that now is the time to focus on good green jobs. The county has those energy goals written out in the energy strategy, and because of COVID-19 and the financial crisis that we're going through right now, focusing on jobs and making those jobs good, well-paying jobs as well makes a lot of sense. So there are also, as part of our research, we've done some outreach and research to identify existing funding streams for this kind of work, as well as think about what existing funding we already have within the county to promote green jobs. And because of that, we've identified a sort of two-tiered priority of both focusing on what we can do now with existing funds, which we've actually been quite surprised to find that NYSERDA, the EPA, and the Department of Labor have a lot of available funds, even right now under this federal government, but that also we can hopefully look forward to some more funding for a more long-term vision in green energy projects and associated funding for green jobs trainings and apprenticeships and otherwise. So for a little context as to what we've been up to, as I mentioned, the case board held its first meeting in March, and because of the onset of the pandemic and our clean energy focus, we developed a green jobs working group to focus on, at least at first, better understanding what was out there in terms of the workforce in those sectors right now and what people are doing to promote green jobs and make them protected jobs with benefits and good wages. So our working group began doing outreach and meeting with stakeholders. So we met with trades workers and union reps, some government staffers, including Natalie Bronofsky, who's the Tompkins County workforce staffer, and has been really helpful in sort of shaping a report that we're drafting right now. And we've met with other people in different counties who are doing jobs training programs in through the community colleges, as well as various professors and community members, to learn a better sense of what is already going on and what the needs are and what basically exists for us to think about how to really promote these jobs and make them good. And so right now we're in the process of finalizing a report. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten a draft ready to send you yet, but hope to, in the upcoming future, provide concrete and actionable recommendations to the county on how to promote and train workers for good, well-paying, clean energy jobs here immediately. So this is something sort of to keep a radar on, and our hope with introducing this to this group right now, as opposed to waiting till we have a final finished polished product, is just to kind of keep it on the horizon and start that conversation with you all as to, you know, what we may be looking for, what we may be missing, and how we can work together to make this a possibility. So we thought it would be helpful just to present a few a little bit more information as to what the report is intending to set out to do. So in talking to Natalie about where the needs are in like understanding how to use the county's resources to promote green energy projects and those jobs, she identified 3 questions that would be helpful for us to answer in the report. And then we also identified our own sections that made sense for doing kind of those concrete, laying out the context for those more concrete recommendations. So those questions included what industries are included in the green jobs sector, or the green jobs, like where are these green jobs and what do they look like and how do we define a green job? So the report sets out to do that, as well as what should apprenticeships and other paths to work and employment look like for the clean energy sector, and what gaps exist right now in sort of the general knowledge of the workforce, and how to bridge that for a more clean energy future. And then how can we align
the workforce systems efforts with our county sustainability targets. So focusing on like, what can the county actually do versus, you know, within the county's purview to reach these goals. And so the draft as it stands so far, which is still subject to change and change structurally, lays out what is a green job in our region, what local employers and workforce stakeholders exist in the clean energy sector, and then what funding is available for these projects and for like better wages and apprenticeship programs and all that. And it then also talks about the opportunity for different training programs that we've like done some research on, and what other counties are doing from an educational standpoint, and then goes into our recommendations. So I know that was a mouthful. I think, let's see. Yeah, I think that's sort of all we had to just update on, but sort of with the goal of generating a better sense of what's going on with CASE and keeping in the loop. So I'd be happy, and I'm sure Sarah as well would be happy to answer any questions. I think for us, one thing that we've struggled a bit with is trying to understand what the county actually can do, like from a land use authority standpoint, you know, lacking that, but then also lacking kind of a, you know, when we think about like the possibility of doing retrofits and focusing on existing buildings, but then realizing, you know, the county doesn't have a land bank. There's no, what we're interested in understanding what legislative levers we can pull to best like do as much as we can within the county, understanding that like without that land use authority, there's less to do that we can do, but that we thought, I mean, one question we had was, what do you all, what are there things that we're missing or levers that you as legislators are like aware of to also just inform how the report shapes up? So that was sort of our question, but I think also, I imagine there'll be other questions for us, and yeah, we'd be happy to answer that as well.
Okay, so Anna, I see your hand. Ellie, if you would stop sharing your desktop, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring up to this committee a bit of a conundrum. So, you know, we have two committees. CASE was originally put together to address environmental needs and priorities. COVID has certainly thrown everything for a loop for everybody. In housing and economic development, being economic development, workforce development is a fundamental piece of economic development, and the committees for workforce, the agencies and departments for workforce development report to HED and always have reported to economic development. We have been prioritizing workforce specifically because that's the biggest issue with respect to economic development that we're facing because of COVID. Deborah and I have spoken about this a lot. I've been attending the CASE board. Natalie is presenting to HED, but wanted to coordinate with the CASE board because of this work. So everything has gotten a bit muddy about the pieces, and ultimately what we have is some pieces reporting to one committee, some pieces reporting to another. So I would like to just bring up the conversation. This is a shift in the direction of what we intended the CASE board to be. And it is, you know, clearly a need, but it also creates a bit of difficulty for us as legislators to figure out where we want to prioritize or where we want to focus the different committees. If it is that we want to focus green workforce development here, but all the rest of workforce development in the other committee, then let's just be aware that that's what we're doing and separating the two. If we want them together, do we want them in this committee or that committee? But I think that we should have the conversation because this wasn't an original focus of the case board, and get people's input.
Okay. Amanda, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Ellie and Sarah, for being here. And I was really glad to hear some of the work you're doing. And I think regardless of what committee this case board reports to, it's really good to get an update. And I think your questions, Ellie, are really good. You know, what is it exactly that this legislature can do? And I think that's something that all of us should be thinking about, and the legislature as a whole can really be thinking about that. And I certainly don't have an answer today, but I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and it sounds like you guys are really getting into it. So that's great. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Amanda. Yes, thank you, Ellie and Sarah. You too have been spearheading this issue in the case board. Yeah, I realized that case started out being focused on climate and energy. Unfortunately, given COVID, the funds that would ordinarily be available for programs targeted specifically to, you know, the county's efforts to be more sustainable in its energy use, et cetera, may not be available. And the board was champing at the bit, particularly Ellie, who's much younger than the rest of us and he has way more energy. Anyway, they were champing at the bit to get busy on something. And it seemed obvious to all of us that the thing that we would most need to focus on is how to combine our economic recovery efforts with a sustainable energy direction. So I'm not sure that I see that it's a huge problem where this information and these recommendations are coming from, because Natalie's going to be the one that is going to be implementing this and leading our charge on workforce development. Anna, you've been part of the case board meetings as much as you've been able to be, given that you've had a busy year. Natalie has been working closely with Sarah and Ellie. I think that this is an initiative that can go forward, and hopefully next year, CASE will be able to work on something more specifically energy related. But no, I'm not particularly concerned myself about who takes ownership of this initiative. I know that we're all participating in it. If other members of the committee have any thoughts on this, or any other legislators have any thoughts on this, I'd be happy to hear them. Sarah, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Deborah. I just wanted to give a little bit of perspective that while we do have a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of expertise across the working group of CASE, I think 4 out of 5 of us are full-time employed in the clean energy sector. It has been challenging to find the time to do the work together that it will take to come up with recommendations that are actually relevant for the legislature to consider, you know, pointing to the question that Ellie raised, because we are a new board, so we are still, each of us, learning what the jurisdictional, you know, realm is for the county. So I just, you know, we've had some dialogue with Natalie. She's looking to us for some expertise. We're looking to her for the ability to craft policy and put something together that action can be taken on. So I guess I'm just trying to set expectations relatively low for the case board, just because we are all volunteer and we're new and it's been a slower process than Ellie and I had hoped. the biggest benefit, I think, so far is that we've been having a lot of different conversations, as Ellie pointed out, you know, with labor unions, with the Workers Center, with community colleges. Outside of the county, we haven't connected with TC3 yet, and I'd welcome an introduction from anybody here to who they think the right person is at TC3. So I don't know, I just wanted to give a little bit of that perspective.
Thanks, Sarah. Anna, your hand's still up?
No, I just wanted to add that my comment wasn't about, you know, figuring out an ownership issue. I don't think it's that as much as there's not 100% overlap of the two committees. So for all of us to be conscientious of the fact that the conversation's happening in two places, and that everybody is included. I really don't think that it's an issue of having it be a problem as much as us being conscientious of how we do things, recognizing it spans two committees. Because it does. I mean, this is one of those issues where, you know, workforce is in one, but this is clearly not just workforce. This is very much in the green energy sector, which is this one. And inevitably things cross over. And these two committees used to be one, and it wouldn't have been an issue. So I'm thinking more of the committee members who are not here, who are there. We will be having that presentation from Natalie on Thursday. And I encourage those who are on peak, who aren't on HED, to come to at least that part of the discussion again, so that we're all, if this is something that we are taking up here and discussing continuously, Natalie will be coming and presenting every month for the rest of this year, because workforce is such a big issue. And she'll highlight the extent to which it's a really big issue on Thursday. Namely, that Tompkins County has one of the highest rates of unemployment of any county in the state right now. We went from one of the lowest to one of the highest. So, you know, there's a lot going on in the context of this. And I really just want to make sure that everybody's on the page and everybody's getting all the information. Given that, Ellie, I think that you've asked the key question of what can the county do? And I feel like specifically looking at the funding that's available, for example, in NYSERDA, I think there's $70 million sitting available for workforce development that hasn't been distributed. An understanding is that a grant process, do counties apply for it? Would that be something we would work with the planning energy and with our planning department? You know, that's unclear. But if some of these buckets of funding are grant processes, then that is a role that the county could play if through Natalie and her department, you know, or through planning and energy, our planning and sustainability department, understanding if they would be participating and applying for those grants, and those would need to become part of the work plan. And I see Katie is here, so as is Darby, maybe they have thoughts and input on that specifically.
Hi there. I guess my main thought is that in my work on the Southern Tier 8 regional group, we review a lot of applications for ARC grants, and I'd say probably 80% of them lately have to do with creating job pipelines for various groups. And I asked at the last meeting if they were considering doing an evaluation of what kind of the secret sauce is for really good pipeline programs to be developed, and they did agree that would be a great thing to do. So that is going to be in the works, because it seems like, from what I see, having an employer at the end of the pipeline ready to take on the people who come through the pipeline is a critical piece of it. And to me, that is often missing in our conversations, particularly around green energy jobs. So maybe that's a focus. I don't know. I just throw that out there. And you know, it's what age is the best age to get people into the pipeline. You know, some groups start as early as middle school. It's usually high school or post high school. But you know what? I think maybe some research on what's working and what isn't working, because there's so many people trying to do these job pipelines right now that that'd be worth some time to look at.
And it would seem to be a role for TCAD in that also. But remember, this is just getting the ball rolling. Ellie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go back to this point of the two committees and also mention, like, I will be at the meeting on Thursday as well. And like, if that is something, I know like we have varying levels of like energy and in the board itself. But like, I would at least be happy, and I'm sure others would be happy to sort of find a way where we can balance sort of keeping the conversation between both and not leaving those people out, because clearly we need everybody involved. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, ladies. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your work. And I know how hard it is for you to get this done on top of everything else. Ellie's a full-time student too. So in any event, okay, we're going to move on because we've got lots to do and only an hour and 4 minutes to get it done in. So
thanks for having us here. Appreciate it. We'll keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
All right. Great. All right. Katie, you and your folks are on. HAB's strategy approach.
Hi, yeah, I'll just jump right in there. Katie, don't even unmute. So I'm here to talk about the work that our department is doing in cooperation with the Water Resources Council on a HABs reduction strategy. And so I just want to cover what was sent out later in the week last week of the approach and the outline and the outreach plan. And that came out a little late just because the Water Resources Council met on Monday. So I incorporated their feedback into the document. And just kind of a really quick, we use the term HABs, but what we're really talking about is cyanobacteria. And these organisms have been found in our waters for millions and millions of years. They're nothing new to our state or our lakes, but it's when the conditions are right that they proliferate and cause problems. Just, you know, they create these scums, and then you can't tell just from looking at them if they're toxic. And so there are toxins in that some of them produce and not all of them. And so it's for a variety of reasons, a lot of concerns and things to stay away from. And the conditions that do lead to these blooms are a couple things that are completely out of our control. So we cannot impact the wind direction and the length of the lake. So that's highly correlated with HAB bloom or the cyanobacteria outbreaks. And then also there's been more research on how the quagga mussels and zebra mussels are impacting the concentrations of cyanobacteria just because they don't like to eat them. So they'll graze through the water column and they don't eat the cyanobacteria, but then they also, the quagga mussels filter nutrients and do some recycling of nutrients in a way that is still under investigation. But because our lakes are so huge, trying to eradicate the zebra mussels and quagga mussels is just a little daunting at this point, but I know there is research looking into that. But then the fourth factor is phosphorus loading. And a lot of the phosphorus that gets into the lake has a long history that goes back to glaciation and deforestation of our landscape from hundreds of years ago. So again, we have limits on what we can do, but we do have practices where we could be reducing phosphorus loading into the lake. And we don't want to just put a target on agriculture, but it is the reality that 80% of the phosphorus runoff from non-point source areas is from agriculture, but there's a lot we can do with this road ditch management and culverts, and then also improving our stream buffers and wetlands in our landscape. So what we put together has a number of action items in it, and we're looking for new and innovative ways to kind of address these. We want to encourage the best management practices that our agricultural community is already doing, and try to figure out how to get more funding for more to go into the ground, and then how to just keep employing best management practices for ditch work and culvert replacement, and then how to work with municipalities and then landowners on having better stream buffer regulations and just keeping those areas intact so that they do slow down nutrients and stormwater runoff into our water bodies. So the documents that were sent out include this kind of an outline for our approach, as well as just a really brief statement on our outreach plan. I mean, I've been talking mostly one-on-one, given our conditions of staffing and where we all are. It's easiest to talk one-on-one with folks and get their input into what are some ideas to put into an action plan. But then we want to have some kind of webinar. So I'd be looking for any input from you folks on what would be useful and different groups to reach out to for being able to solicit ideas and input into the action items that we put into a strategy. So I'll just keep it quick. That was my quick 5 minutes, and take any questions.
Amanda, your hand's up.
Well, I don't have a question because I've been participating on the HABS subcommittee. I just want to say that Darby deserves lots and lots of appreciation for leading that subcommittee, for wrangling a group, for keeping up with what the state is doing and trying to get everybody to come up with plans and what can we do. And I think we all need to appreciate her for really working really hard on this issue. And it's, you know, it's something, like she said, like there's so much that we don't have control over, and yet we want to do something. So trying to figure out what are those some things that we can do, and the state has not been particularly helpful in trying to figure that out. So anyway, thank you, Darby, and I'm, you know, happy to continue being on that committee and helping in whatever small possible way I can. So thanks.
Just a question, Darby. Is John Neglia or somebody from Soil and Water on their committee? Okay, good.
Hi, John, there he is. Yeah, I think they do a little tag teaming participating, but yeah, they have been actively involved either on or staff.
Okay, Anna, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was curious about the 65 million that Cuomo put into HABs last year. I know we've talked about it briefly. And, you know, to second what Amanda's saying, I know you've been doing this for a long time and your information is always brilliant. And it's more of an effort for all of us to just keep up. But ultimately, I'm curious about that 65 million. If I understand that a lot of it went into research, but I was curious if there's still any left and if there's any indication of any more going into actual operations. And if the idea or the hope is to come up with a list of these recommendations, I kind of threw something of taking notes of what you were saying. I'm assuming ultimately you're going to come up with a list of action steps that the county could take to reduce runoff of phosphorus, or am I understanding it properly?
Yeah, let me just go back to the money, the $65 million. Some of that was used to develop these 12 priority water body action plans. So that was part of it. And then the rest just is part of the grant programs that the state already has. And John, you can help me if I say anything wrong in this. So there already is like the environmental, like through the Environmental Protection Fund, the water quality improvement programs, and then different programs through ag and markets that I think they were just saying, yeah, we have all this money that we're putting into, and you get like some bonus points if you say this is a best management practice that's mentioned in the Hugo Lake HABs action plan. And then there is some research too. So there are some, I just tuned into a webinar in the last week or two on some work that SUNY ESF and some other universities are doing, but they're on like small lakes looking at just how once you have HABs, like if there are HABs in the water, how do you actually treat the water that's there? So I mean, it's interesting stuff going on, but it's not kind of this large scale needs that we have.
And I'm curious, just as a follow-up, if 80% of this is runoff from agriculture, although we really don't want to, have rhetoric that it's all their fault, so I really want to avoid that at all costs. But John, I'm curious what supports, because I know there's, they're dealing with climate change and they're dealing with 5 different jobs. I mean, there's so many things that our farmers are dealing with right now. On top of it, trying to minimize their phosphorus runoff. Is there any support, any programming? What have you seen for farmers to be part of the solution?
I'll hit on this a little bit in my agency update, but mostly it's through our AEM framework, the Ag Environmental Management Framework. So we have funding that comes from the state, and they actually put every county additional funding of $100,000 into that pot that can go into projects. So we're utilizing that this year for a project in Wasco watershed. And then they're also helping a little bit with cost share matches. So before it was 25% cost share on some of these programs. Now they're starting to bump it up to somewhere in the neighborhood of 87.5%, maybe 90% cost shares. So they're trying to make the grant programs a little bit more palatable to the farmers, but again, it's still a voluntary program, and there's got to be planning behind that. So that's where the AEM framework really comes into play, where if we can help them plan and get BMPs in the system, then they're ready for a grant application. So as quick as we can take advantage of that money, we will.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning, it's not 80% of all of the phosphorus loading, it's 80% of the non-point source, right?
Correct.
So there are other sources. It's not quite as bad as it sounds. Yeah, Martha, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. And I got to run in a minute. I would ask that documents like what Darby's talking about, Anna's last minute resolution, if those could get sent to all legislators, I'm on the distribution list for this committee. I didn't see either of those. It kind of makes these sort of like just totally out of context here to not have the information. I would ask, what is the involvement here of other counties around the lake on terms of mitigation here?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to do a Tompkins County focused approach, but there is the action plan that applies to all of Cayuga Lake that the state put out, and it's interesting. Different counties are working on different levels, and like John mentioned the AEM program, and it sounds like Cayuga County is updating their program this year, so that will target some of these issues, because really the north end of the lake has really been hit hard by toxic levels of cyanobacteria this year, and much more so than the south end. So and much more recently. So there is a big need to address those, but we have these huge watersheds sub-watersheds that go into the south end of Cayuga Lake. So I mean, and I've been talking with Cayuga County about where they are with a couple plans that they've been working on, and not so much with Seneca County, but they're outreaching through Community Science Institute to get more stream monitoring, just to understand the phosphorus levels that are getting into the lake.
Yeah, because it seems to me, as much as you said how little control we may have over any kind of mitigation or treatment, any kind of control we have, you kind of have to divide by 3, counting the other counties that are directly involved. So, all right, thanks. I got to run. Thanks very much.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I don't see any blue hands. So, moving on. Thanks, Darby. I know how dedicated you are to our lake and our watershed, and I do appreciate all of your work. Katie, you and Megan have a work plan report for us?
Yeah, I actually was wondering if I could start with my commissioner's report. I just have a few items to update you all on.
That would be fine.
All right. I wanted to let you know that I think some of you at least have heard NYSERDA has a new program called a Build Ready program that's looking primarily at brownfields, large brownfield sites, trying to figure out how they can help people build large scale renewable projects, either wind or solar. And we've been taking a look at what the county might have that we might want to nominate for that program. And are considering nominating the Caswell Road and the Hillview Road landfill sites. All it is really right now is a very simple kind of where the property is located, what the property numbers are, just a super high level. And you would just put that in and they would do an evaluation of the suitability of redeveloping the site for renewable energy projects. I assume they'd be looking at where the different phase lines run, how far substations are, what the capacity is on the various lines. At any rate, we are now in the midst of talking with administration and solid waste and facilities about that to see if there's any concerns that we haven't thought about. So we're thinking we might go ahead and put in the nomination form just to start that along. It obligates the county to nothing at all. And they're talking about only, I think it's 6 projects for the first year of this program across the state. So it's unlikely that we'll probably get this, but it does seem like it'd be interesting to know what NYSERDA thinks about our old landfill sites to see whether that is a good potential for a larger scale solar array.
Katie, you mentioned 2 sites, Caswell Road and what's the other one?
Hillview. And that's down in Danby. And a lot of that land actually is in Tioga County. So we'd need to talk with Tioga County about that. At this point, it seems to me like the Caswell site is a little more feasible. And we have been in touch with Ray Berger from the town to talk with him. He thought it'd be a great opportunity. If we decide to move forward with Hillview, we'll of course talk with the town of Danby planner as well and reach out to Tioga County to make sure they're okay with just nominating it. Apparently you can even nominate land you don't even own. So it's a very casual kind of first cut that NYSERDA is doing with this nomination process.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I nominate New Jersey.
Yeah, so just wanted to let you know that that was kind of in the works, and if anything really materializes, obviously would bring it to your attention immediately.
Well, thank you.
The BEA program is hosting a lunchtime short webinar, kind of a new effort to try to get on people's radar for very busy business owners who are more concerned about COVID relief than on their building's energy right now. But half an hour over lunchtime, they're going to be putting that on August 27th, so this Thursday from 12 to 12:30, and a bunch of publicity has gone out about it. But if you want to know more, we can certainly send the link around for that as well.
I think it came around.
I think it did too.
Is this for the Lansing BEA program, or is this across the board?
Across the board. It's titled How to Reduce Your Building's Energy Use and Lower Operational Costs. So if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. That's a zingy title.
Yeah, zing zing. I'm curious, how many facilities have we had input in?
For the existing building program in Lansing?
Well, for both of them, actually.
So the existing buildings, I pulled these numbers for 2020, but existing buildings, we've had 11 program inquiries, and that has gone into 7 actual intro meetings or site visits, and then 6 of these energy option reports and design charrettes have happened. And just as a reminder, this was an opportunity that Heat Smart Tompkins offered to PCAD and our group kind of together to try to help them implement. They had funding for this. And so that is how we decided to try to dip our toe into existing buildings, because that's not what the Business Energy Advisors Program was set up to do. It's been a struggle, I gotta say. Just like with COVID, it's very hard to get attention of small business owners or medium-sized business owners right now, understandably. And also, even before COVID, the incentives that are out there to help business owners make energy improvements are just very tiny in comparison to new construction and major remodels. So it's an uphill battle for existing buildings.
So the Lansing program was funded by HeatSmart?
It's a NYSERDA grant. So, but the NYSERDA grant went to HeatSmart, and then HeatSmart, see if I can get this right. HeatSmart then contracted with TCAD, and then we were kind of a subcontractor to TCAD. That's right. Seem right to you, Megan?
Yes. So we're sort of the behind, like in the background partner. So as far as NYSERDA is aware, they've got basically HeatSmart is, their direct contract. HeatSmart has a contract with TCAD, and then TCAD has a contract with us. So yeah.
All God's children have contracts. And then the regular BEA program for new builds, how many facilities have we hit with that, if you happen to know?
Again, I don't have the full program numbers right now. Maybe Megan can look as I talk about it. But for just 2020, which I find somewhat amazing, we've had 18 program inquiries for new construction. 10 of them have had these intro meetings, and another 6 have had these energy charrettes. So that's been interesting that it's still moving forward at a pretty good clip.
Okay, thank you.
And then the last thing I wanted just to mention to you is that it's very exciting. The Water Resources Council's clean boating map is at the printers. So they are printing 3,000 maps, and some of them will be going to surrounding counties based on the amount of dollars they put into the map printing as well. But yeah, it was a labor of love of a lot of people working together to make that happen. So that's really exciting.
Congratulations.
So that's it for my commissioner's report.
Anna, you have a question?
That's brilliant. That's awesome. Congratulations. Just curious where people can pick them up, and if there's going to be a digital copy, if there's a link to that.
Go for it, Darby.
Yeah, we don't, it literally is at the printer right now, so we don't have them on hand yet. And then Lynn Leopold, who was on the call earlier, she's the head of the education committee, so they're coming up with the distribution list for that. And I mean, they're going to target places with marinas and kind of really at this point anywhere where they can stuff things that people can physically take. I'm working on how to do the electronic copy because it's some gigantic file, so we need to shrink it down in a way from the designer so that people could actually open it on their phone and not be bogged down. I mean, we have to do file sharing to even look at it. But yeah, I mean, a big applause to that Lynn Leopold and her crew, and Todd Miller, who has moved to the Adirondacks and like was closing or buying out Lynn and his house and still like putting in contributions to this.
That's amazing. This might be something worth Dominic putting out a press release once you have an entire plan in place, because it's such a great resource that we're doing. And thank you, Lynn, tremendously.
Can I just make a comment? And you were asking about distribution. We thought we would right away use the information that we provide on the map are all the amenities for boaters all the way around the lake. So all the way to the north end on both sides. There are a lot of marinas and boat launches where we will be distributing these, as well as the visitor center and any place where tourists will come. And I'm sorry that it's it took us a long time to get to this point. I'm happy that we're there, but you know, summer's almost over, but people are still voting. There's a lot of votes out there. Anyway, it was as Katie, you said, it was a labor of love. We're really glad to have it done. It was a gigantic project. It was so much bigger than any of us ever dreamed it would be. We were just going to revise a simple little 8.5 by 11 3-fold on safe, not safe boating, but clean boating. And it grew into this gigantic map. And it's going to be beautiful. It really is a stunning piece of layout. And we got great professional help. And Todd Miller was our go-to person for so many tech issues. But I just have to thank my committee. I think we all want to retire. But thank you.
Okay. All right. So,
Great.
Katie, you're
all right. Yeah. So last week, Kathy Covert sent you a marked up version of our work program that the committee received, and I realized that was 9 pages long, which is lots to dig through. So I actually came up with just a 10-slide PowerPoint. If you'd like, I can show that to you.
Yes.
All right, let's see if I can share my screen.
Okay, I can see it.
Yeah, great. Okay, so Deborah, I believe you asked that we cover these 3 things. So what we've been able to do in this crazy year, what's been delayed or changed, and kind of thoughts about how what we've done with in light of the pandemic might impact next year's work program as well. I will say that it was great to have the 9-page work program that I shared with you, because I think it made it so that we could keep track of what was going on and keep a focus on what we were trying to accomplish, which was really super helpful in this time. Just a reminder, I think this was kind of covered a little bit before, but we have 2 main committees of the legislature that oversee various aspects of our work. Today, I'll primarily be focusing on the topics that PEAK covers, which is energy and greenhouse gas emissions, natural water resources, comprehensive planning, county government planning, and municipal support and engagement. And just a reminder, we have a staff of 11 here in the planning department. We have 8 planners and 3 support staff. So in terms of staffing impacts, I wanted to kind of mention the size of our staff, because it was a little sobering putting this PowerPoint together in terms of our staffing impacts. We had myself, Kristen, and Darielle all deployed for pretty significant amounts of time to help with the EOC planning team, and in my case with public information with Kristen. She's actually still helping public information for COVID response. And Darielle Drake in our office really did substantial work with finance division this year, helping them get through the backlog of invoices and documents to help them be able to focus on the COVID response. We had
sorry to interrupt, but the slides aren't progressing, I think, for the other participants.
Just so you know. Thank you.
I thought we were still on prologue.
Oh, is that better? Let's see.
Yes.
So that went backward. Now we're going forward. Did you see these? I mean, you got to see the layout. It's nice.
If you could send those, Katie, I would appreciate it.
Yes, and Kathy Covert asked that I upload this to Minute Track as well, so it'll be
okay. Great.
Yeah. So thank you, Megan. I appreciate that. So we had a number of planners and a support staff person who had significantly reduced hours during this time period due to childcare needs. We had 2 full-time furloughs for a big chunk of the year, and we have 1 early retirement scheduled this fall. So like I said, it's kind of sobering to look at that for a staff of 11, what that impact looks like. Other impacts, and I imagine this applies to everyone you're going to hear from today, but you know, this sudden adjustment to telework, getting VPN access, figuring out laptops and tools, getting people used to Teams and Zoom. I think it's been remarkable how quickly people have adapted to all of that, but you know, it was a struggle for sure. And then the administration heavy time as well with telework agreements, all of these leaves to try to understand COOPs and ROOPs and tracking COVID hours for reimbursement, all took a lot of work and was an impact to our work program. And now with the early retirement, Darielle's going to be retiring this fall. She's been here over 25 years and is just a cornerstone of our work here in terms of financing, reporting, our CDBG program, our tourism program. She just processes all the contracts, all of the drawdowns. It's going to be a big loss, and we're working on recruiting right now. So some of the highlights of the work that we have completed focus on the energy strategy. We've really kept an eye on that and done a lot around green fleet and facilities. We did the fleet report that we brought to you in June. Telematics are now in all 23 vehicles that we wanted to track under that pre-program. We do have applications underway. We did a lot of research figuring out where to apply, what to apply for in terms of getting some money for our buildings, for energy analysis, for real-time energy management, and actually for time from a contract, this on-site energy manager, to be able to get more time from a consultant to help our facilities with our energy work that we want to do for the energy strategy. We do expect to complete our greenhouse gas emissions inventories for government and community this fall. And the hazard mitigation plan is well underway. The FEMA funding is moving forward. We had great participation, better than any other update to the hazard mitigation plan. I think the remote work is really working well in that instance. And you just heard about the work on HABs. A few other things I wanted to highlight. We have contracted for an aquifer study for the Lower Fall Creek aquifer. And you know, we don't talk about it very much, but our general municipal law 239 reviews, we've done over 70 of those since the beginning of the year. They take a significant amount of time for us to review and comment on. We did at the beginning of the year have a municipal grant workshop with the county and introduce a lot of municipalities to various consultants to see what they offered in terms of planning support. We supported the town of Newfield with their Hamlet Main Street revitalization to get some funding through the Cornell program to help them out this year. Completed the Ag District 8-year review. Actually just got the letter today that it's A-okay and it got certified, so that's good. We submitted a proposal under NYSEG's non-pipe alternatives program for the airport geothermal system, conducted a secret training for all staff involved in capital planning. And then finally, we do make recommendations on all the foreclosure properties as well. Some of the things that got delayed or were changed because of COVID, we've been having a heck of a time with the state trying to get a final contract that is in good shape for the resiliency and recovery plan. It's just been forever. It's been almost a year and a half that we have been working on trying to get a final contract. So we're still plugging away at that, trying to make it happen. Our municipal assistance program some of that just didn't go forward as well. You know, the village of Groton kind of isn't responding too much because they just have the other things they're working on opposed to working on their comprehensive plan update. And we're thinking of taking a different approach with the large scale renewables. We were going to try to incorporate that into our tools document for renewables. And now we're thinking it might be better just to participate with this new office of New York State large scale renewables. I can't remember the full name of it, but we had a conference call with them recently, and it seems like they're moving forward. It seems silly to come up with something that isn't totally in line with what they're going to be offering as guidance. I think we kind of covered the Business Energy Advisors program. And then as part of the mid-year adjustment that Jason and the legislature moved forward, we returned the funds that were earmarked for this year for the Parks and Trails grants, the Housing Affordability and Infrastructure grants, and the Stream Corridor Protection Program in an effort to try to reduce this year's 2020 funding budget gap. And then finally, just wanted to note that we were going to be working on employee commute, quantifying the greenhouse gas emissions and coming up with ways to help employees reduce their greenhouse gas emissions from their commute. I think COVID did a better job of that than we possibly could have. So I guess we could count that as a
win.
Job well done. But it was a hard year to try to quantify the employee commute. So we just kind of put that on pause. And just wanted to note that although it's not the purview of peak, we did do a lot of things around tourism, housing, ST8, transportation. Remember back we had the strategic tourism plan endorsed by the legislature, the conference center. There's been a lot of work done looking at revenue projections, budget tracking, contract amendments, just trying to deal with the fallout on the tourism industry with this whole issue. The Cuba Lake Blueway Trail, they do have a new website, which is very nice. And they're going to have signs at 14 sites in the fall. We've got the CDBG funds for rental assistance. There's been a lot of admin for Community Housing Development Fund with various MOUs and NOFAs and the whole alphabet soup. ST8 is moving along. As part of the budget, we did an evaluation of the costs and benefits of that membership. I am participating in the ARC grant review. And on September 3rd, I'll put a plug in, we've got a Route 13 corridor study online public forum. And the last slide that I have here is in terms of thoughts for 2021. I think it's interesting to note that partnerships have been kind of a theme of this whole COVID response. I think our community, part of the reason we've done so well in addressing the difficulties is that we've been working so closely with partners. I think it's highlighted the need to work closely with partners, and it also uncovered the uncertainties. People just don't know how much budget or staff time they have available to be able to work on different things. It makes it difficult. In terms of planning focus, we need to keep looking for opportunities to help the community plan for post-COVID recovery. But we also don't want to forget our core focus of implementing the comprehensive plan. At some point, we hope that COVID won't be an issue, and we'll still be wanting to work on, building density in our core areas, protecting our lands and waters, and keeping an eye on affordable housing and all the other stuff that is in our comprehensive plan. Participation, we've learned a lot about online meetings and where they work, where they don't work. In general, I think we're seeing great participation from the public. People kind of enjoy being able to watch a meeting when they have time to watch it instead of having to come to a physical location at 7 o'clock in the evening. So that's something we'll continue to embrace technology. And I think everyone will agree that the whole thing we learned is that you need to be flexible, come up with your best plans, but then be ready to move when you need to. That is what I have for my presentation. And I'm happy to try to answer questions on that or the work program document that I shared last week.
Thank you, Kate. I see Dan has a question.
Thank you. The work plan is a very impressive document, very impressive list. There were two issues that I did want to ask you about. One is trails, recreation trails. So I'll start with that one. There is a line in there, as opportunities arise, assist community partners to further implement the Tompkins Priority Trail strategy. Has anything happened with that this year?
The last I heard happened was, I think last week actually, there was a meeting of the 5 town supervisors with NYSEG on the South Hill Trail. They, I think it was called by Town of Ithaca, called it together because they were trying to, it sounded to me from what I saw, like negotiate a better deal with NYSEG on the lease agreement that they were offering. I know that Scott was going to follow up to try to find out the results of that meeting, but I haven't heard yet.
Great, thank you. The other issue I want to bring up, as I know because I previewed it to you, is rural broadband or broadband access for the whole county. I'm not sure what I want to say, except it is just so obvious to many people that this issue has quickly risen to very high on the list of necessities through what's happened with the coronavirus. I mean, it existed, the problems existed before, but now everyone gets it more quickly. How if you do not have access to broadband internet, you cannot participate in school, you cannot participate in work, in many work situations, telehealth, government participation. So I'm just going to keep talking about it, that this is something that we really need to pay attention to and try to work some solutions for. I know that a possible way to address this is going to be through ST8, a regional approach to this, and that might be fine. I've read through some of the things you sent me, and there's some good stuff in there, and there's a lot of questions I have. But what I want to say on top of everything is that even if it's this kind of work is done at a regional level, I feel very strongly that we need a very strong point person in Tompkins County, someone that's really involved in whatever process is used to plan to how to get broadband access to everybody in the county, that can bring our concerns to whoever's doing the planning and can bring information back from them to share with the county and at the town level, so that everybody feels like there is actually progress on this.
Yeah, well, I understand that ST8 is kind of the leader on this. I think there's definitely room for involvement and strong activity from Tompkins County. I know I've talked with Heather McDaniel about this at TCAD, and she and I both, we do agree that there needs to be, it can't just be each town trying to do this on their own. And I think it makes sense probably to use the people who represent Tompkins County on ST8 as those point people. It might not be one person, but it might be Heather, me, and Anna as the point. We're members of the ST8 board, regional board, so that might make sense. I do know that I got a email, a doodle poll today with that group, and Deborah, you were on that as well, to set up a meeting with this person named Steve Manning, who's the CEO of the Southern Tier Network, a nonprofit open access fiber provider. So I think they're trying to schedule that for next week. So I think that we are working on it, and it certainly is it's a huge issue. I think you're spot on with that. And I have mentioned this to our BOCES leadership, and they're obviously the BOCES is well aware of how critical this need is as well. So I think there are a lot of people who are also very interested in trying to finally solve this problem. It's hard because it's expensive. There's not a lot of money available right now. And so I personally feel like a regional approach is very important, because if you can aggregate enough customers, you could either attract business to want to come serve the customers, or you could put together a very compelling grant application to try to get some significant funds to address the problem.
We'll be, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
One more, just quick. You mentioned that you agree that it doesn't make sense for the towns to be doing their own. Right now, the town of Lansing has their own broadband committee, Danby has one proposed, and Newfield has one proposed. So my question is who's going to give them that message, towns? Who's going to try to get that conversation with the towns to let them know that there may be a larger plan going on, and how do they want to think about that?
Okay, let me interject here, because I know Anna wants to respond to that. I know, Dan, you want to talk about this more. Annie has her hand up, but here's the problem. It's 3:11. We still have to hear from Soil and Water. We still have to hear from CCE. We still have Anna's member filed resolution. We are going to have a meeting of HED on Thursday. Where this is going to be gone into at much greater length. Dan, I realize that you're unable to attend that meeting. I'm going to try to suggest that for the benefit of getting everybody's, presentations in, that perhaps we can take this offline. Dan, you, me, Katie, and Anna. Can we do this by email? Can we get your questions presented, and I'll make sure that they're addressed at Thursday's meeting? Would that be all right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Annie, is that okay with you? I mean, I know you're rural, and I know you.
It was about something else I had my question about. Wasn't about what Dan or the internet.
Okay, can you make it real quick?
Yep, and it's probably doesn't need a response. Just a thought that as we're going forward, with things that affect the environment, energy, and the environment, but especially with things that affect county buildings or our facilities, our fleet of vehicles. And you Katie mentioned the telematics. I think it was Katie or Megan. But anyway, so just wondering if, for the immediate future, if the projects that might be prioritized are ones where we could prove, have some data to say that we're going to have a fairly quick return on investment. And so I'm thinking telematics might help us with some of that, and just something to keep going forward. I think that would be more appealing to our budget.
Thank you. And I do think that we are very focused on getting the data we need to make good decisions. That's kind of the platform that we're trying to build with that whole greening fleets and facilities work.
Thank you.
The Flex Tech opportunity will provide kind of the complement on the facilities side for what the telematics will tell us about our vehicles, and those new Flex Tech studies should help tell us about our buildings.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Annie. That was a good suggestion. So thanks, Katie. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Darby. And thank you, Dan. So, all right, John, you're up.
Okay. Let me see if I can go ahead and share my screen. All right. Everybody can see that?
Yes.
Okay. I will try
Let's
to
see how fast you can talk.
All right, I will try to make this as quick as I possibly can. Let me switch my screens here. Okay. So yeah, it's going to mirror Katie's presentation a lot. So I'll try to jump through this as quick as I possibly can. Usually I have some animals or alpacas or cows or something, but no pretty pictures in this one. So sorry for that. So yeah, jumping right into it. So things that we've had to eliminate this year due to the COVID impacts. We are a staff of 5 people here, a account clerk and myself, and then 3 other technicians. So fairly small staff, but we are able to get a lot done, and we have gotten a lot done. The one thing that we had to put on hold a little bit, eliminate is kind of a hard word for it, but the full-time engineer that we asked for last year in our budget presentation. We were going full steam ahead with that December, January, put out applications and didn't receive anything locally in our first round of applications. Then broadcasted our net a little bit wider and did receive 1 application. There were some immigration issues that we were working through. They eventually decided not to take the position. So that took us some time, and then COVID hit. And we had our appropriation reduction from the county for the 25% in the 3rd quarter, and then just now again in the 4th quarter. So we discussed with the county administrator and Jason to see how we want to work this. We still need an engineer on board. And so we decided to go down a contracting route, which we've put together contracts with Barton out of Syracuse, and also Jess Engineering out of Alpine. B&L is going to do most of our stream restoration and municipal work, while Jess Engineering is very heavily involved in a lot of our agricultural work currently. And so now we're just going to have them on retainer for the engineer. Still haven't abandoned the plans to hire a full-time engineer if funds are reallocated, but I think this scenario gets us through during the COVID impacts here. Also, seasonal staff, we usually hire 1 or 2 seasonal staff to help out with some of our programs like hydrilla or hydroseeding. We didn't do that this year. A lot of our public education outreach events that are hosted on farms, Empire Farm Days, regional events that we do a lot of our outreach to farm communities. They had to be held online, which really doesn't work a lot of times for the farm community. They need to be there touching equipment, feeling the soil, looking at seed. So that was unfortunate. And then also some of our staff education and training. We did get education through our water quality symposium that happens every year up in Syracuse. That happened in February. But then we also have a fall workshop that has been online. And online is good, but it doesn't get us all we need as soil conservationists and water resource professionals to be in the field. So I guess some of the things that have been delayed, for the most part, most of our projects have stayed on track so far. A lot of our projects are grant driven by the state and federal government. So we need to make sure that those funds are in-house, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a few slides here. But we had a lot of meetings as this pandemic hit between district managers and the district boards of how do we keep the programs running? How do we keep the district running? Which I know probably all departments and a lot of people did in March, April, May timeframe. But we really focused on staff scheduling, our coops and roops, and actually I shared the Tompkins County plan across the state, and there was some county soil and water districts across the state that really liked the plans from Tompkins County and developed their own off of those. So kudos to all those putting together those plans in Tompkins County. Also, we talked a lot about billing and how we need to voucher for projects, keep projects cash flow ready, keeping our standard operation procedures in place, not only for in-office, but also our field operations. There's a lot of field activity that we still need to continue. So we had to come up with operating procedures for those. Just keeping our board trained, staff trained, like I talked about. And then how do we respond to those catastrophes above and beyond COVID, floods? We're starting to head into a little bit of a drought. Some areas in the state have drought warnings. So we've talked amongst ourselves as soil and water districts across the state of how do we respond to those added catastrophes. Hopefully they don't happen, but having plans in place. So I mentioned funding. Again, this is kind of the hallmark of any state soil and water conservation committee meeting that I've been on, is expect delays for your payments from the state. So we've been vouchering the state for as much funds as we possibly can, so that they're sitting in our district funds in the bank accounts. So we're not asking for money from the state in 2021 when they may not have it. Asking for extensions on the projects, so there may be availability beyond the next 2 years, 2 years, maybe things will turn economically, who knows. And then just prioritizing those projects that have the cash flow availability from the farms, and those municipalities that have availability to pay for the project up front or can cover their cost share and get reimbursed. We're working with those first, getting those in the pipeline. And we're finding that procurement is getting more and more difficult. A lot of contractors are starting to find material. Quantities are dwindling. Lumber, just construction materials are hard to get, or there's significant delays in that. So a lot of our projects are weather related, so we need to get them in here in the next few months. And as delays keep happening, it gets tougher and tougher to implement. But just a few of our projects that we've been able to do this year, close to about $1 million of state funding has gone out the door, cash flow through our district. We did a stream bank stabilization project out in Salmon Creek. If you've seen the Tompkins Weekly, we had a couple of spotlights in there with the project. Town of Lansing has contributed significantly for funds, along with the flood hazard mitigation and riparian corridor protection funds from the county planning department, about $25,000 there. Also a barnyard project in the Wasco watershed, wetland creation in the upper Susquehanna watershed, and then 2 ag waste storages that are happening in the Fall Creek watershed. So like I said, close to about $1 million of state funding this year. Next year, we're projecting close to $2.5 million in state funding that's going to have to be cash flowed. So we've been vouchering the state for these, trying to get them in-house. So just some future factors to consider. you've heard this before, just the flexibility of childcare. Schools are starting up. We have staff that have elementary all the way up to college, school-age children that they got to take care of. So we need to be flexible around their schedules, just general health concerns. In our situation, remote working has been helpful. We've all been able to do remote working, but it's difficult to accomplish those field tasks that you may have to be out on a farm or in the stream or out in the field. The interagency and department communication, I think it was great. We had great communication from the county letting us know about the route plans and how we need to accomplish ours and submit those to the county administrator. And I think just as an agency, the more communication we had, the better. And being able to communicate with those departments, especially since we're in a county building, was crucial to know, okay, when's the building got to be closed? Do we need to follow any other plans of actions or standard operating procedures from other departments? Just keeping staff, our cooperators, and our public in a good mental health state is key. Like I said, a lot of our programs are voluntary. So it's stressful times, and the more we can keep them in a good mental state, the more they're going to implement projects. So, and I think just as was mentioned earlier, expect the unexpected and adapt. That's the name of the game anymore, is being able to switch your work plans on the fly has been crucial. So that's all I have. I was hopefully quick enough.
Well, I think we're going to just have to go over a little bit, and if anybody has to leave, they can leave. But we may need another 10 minutes or so. I think, Anna, what we're going to do with your motion is schedule a special peak meeting before our next ledge meeting, and we will address your motion then, or your resolution on the constitutional amendment. I would note that most of the projects that that Soil and Water has worked on this year and every year really help deal with the phosphorus loading problem that contributes to our HABs problems in the lake. So that's a good thing. Does anyone have any questions for John? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, John. Really appreciate your presentation and the time you spent. And we will move on to Ken and Cornell Cooperative Extension. Hi, Ken. And Sarah's still here? Or did she give up?
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
She is. Okay, great. All right. Floor. Ken, you're muted. Okay.
I was thinking that I was muted by all you all. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for waiting until to hear this. I'll make it short because actually Katie did capture a lot of the things that I had jotted down. I did not prepare a presentation because I didn't get one to you by the date of the minutes or the date of the presentation last Monday. So I just have a Word document that I'll be working from. And I've got it broken down into the things that Deb was asking for. I'll start with, let me introduce, before we do that, Sarah Barton is the vice president of our board of directors. Actually, she serves as a co-president along with Tisa Fontaine-Hill. Officially, constitutionally, we can only have a president and a vice president, but they're effectively working as co-presidents this year. So Sarah's here. She's a small business person here in Tompkins County, runs a great local food business, that you all might wish to know about. But in the meantime, so I'll start with how our work plan for 2020 had to change to accommodate the pandemic. And I think one of the critical things has been, we've actually done a lot more this year with direct service, and in particular related to food production, food access, local food promotion. So we've been building a lot of raised beds with community centers and low-income households, serving now several hundred households when you add up the community centers that are also working with households. There's been lots of local food boxes, hundreds of local food boxes delivered each week to low-income households, local food deliveries to community centers, PPE deliveries to farms and farm workers. And these have been strategic in the sense that we wanted to keep food flowing, and we wanted to keep farmers and other food producers in business. And so a big part of what we've been doing is looking for ways to help generate income for local business, local food producers, and as they, in their own work, to make sure that they can actually survive. We've obviously, along with everybody else, we've done a lot more remote programming. We're still doing most of our educational efforts virtually, and the results have really been astonishing. I mean, much higher than, or much better than what we had originally expected. And this has been the case for a lot of other people as well. But we have certain types of classes. As you can imagine, the food-related classes have, in terms of enrollment, have skyrocketed. In fact, I'd say we probably are running 50 to 75% higher for our classes, maybe more than that, actually, than enrollment when we have physical enrollment. The energy education more recently has started to generate interest. It was pretty slow at first, but our education in part has been aided by the type of work by partnerships with media. So media itself has been, in some ways, have been starved for stories, and so we've, as we've been starting to develop stronger relationships with local media, including TV, we've begun to see a bit more interest, significantly more interest actually in energy education. The county had paid for work related to engaging graduate students in environmental topics. We've had to shift that a bit. There's been a much stronger emphasis. We were anticipating getting 6 graduate students for environmental topics. We've got 2 currently working on energy-related topics, but we have 14 or 15 working in public health and food-related topics currently, along with which has really resulted in actually a really deep relationship with a couple of departments on Cornell's campus. As I said, we have had more interest from local media in what we do, and therefore that's been driving a lot more participation. And partly because of the media, partly because of our work with students, and partly just because researchers themselves on campus seem to be more interested in what's going on locally than perhaps they were in the past. And so we've seen a lot more, a great uptick actually in researchers wanting to work with us on proposals and on projects. What we've been able to continue to do, I mean, with respect to the funding that the county has given us for OTRs, the county gave funding for us to channel to the Food Policy Council for the food system planning effort, and that effort continues. And in fact, it's been really greatly enriched by because of the pandemic. We've actually been able to also deeply engage with the Food Task Force, which is it's primarily made up of about 20, but there are 80 different organizations and individuals involved in the Food Task Force. And they've been, so we've actually been part of what we wanted and we encouraged and sort of mandated has been a strong connection and coordination between the Food Policy Council's food system planning effort, the staff who works for us, and the Food Task Force. So as the Food Task Force identifies issues, that are immediate issues. We're using that really to inform what we need to do with the food system over the long term, using what's happening in this emergency as a key part of the strategy for identifying what needs to happen in the long term. I mentioned already the grad student engagement, the OTR that was for grad students. We moved from we are doing 2 with environment, but the others are significantly more, 12, 14 others working on food and public health. The operations management position that the county funded really has been a godsend, or a county send perhaps, as we've had to wrestle with all the issues that Katie raised, with respect to staffing and other operational concerns, planning, reentry plans, and so on. In our case, it's a staff of 200 that she's had to work with. So it's been absolutely pivotal for us, crucial to have that. And thank you again for coming up with the funds for that. What has fallen through the cracks or had to be delayed, Katie mentioned this in some ways, the collaborative efforts. So our energy-related collaborative efforts with local government and local schools, we had some fairly significant amounts of funding, programming earmarked for working with local governments, both in Tompkins County as well as elsewhere, and with local school districts here in the county on energy. And that's just naturally enough, that just has not been the focus for most groups here. Also, our individual homeowner energy actions fell off the cliff, fell off, they dropped by more than 50%. So in 2019, we had more than 350 households take significant steps related to energy efficiency or renewable energy, steps like home energy retrofits or purchase of PV systems or purchase of electric vehicles. The rate this year up until very recently has been only about 50% of that. So if the rate had continued through the year, we would have had about 175. We have seen a significant uptick recently. So we're thinking we actually might end up reaching the goal of 350 again this year. Another sort of collaborative effort, we've had significant, we're expected to do a lot of work with collaborators on obesity and healthy living throughout the region. And we've not done anything with that because our collaborators just have not had the time to engage. It has not been a topic of huge interest. And then also we have a couple of programs that are based on significant engagement of seniors as volunteers. A key one has been funding to support people in reentry and using seniors as primarily seniors, any volunteers, but primarily seniors from faith communities, working with people before they leave prison or jail, developing relationships with them, and then supporting them when they come out of prison or out of jail, re-enter the community. This was a partnership we have with 6 churches locally, 6 faith communities, not just churches, locally, and we've had to retool that, and we're still, it's been delayed. So we are starting to do a lot of programs, but it's at a significantly reduced scale, and it's been delayed.
Ken, can I ask you, with respect to programs that haven't moved forward because of COVID, are there funds that were earmarked for those programs that can be rolled over into next year?
So the funds that we have, the funds that I mentioned, these were the program that I just mentioned for reentry. Those are funds from a private foundation, and we have obtained permission from them to roll some of that money over into next year. The efforts that we have with the county have actually all been continuing. The key, our youth development efforts, which was the next piece I was going to talk about, during the actual shutdown period, we had while staff were working hard to have remote programming, it was difficult to say the least. After having been doing remote work, for classes, nobody really wanted to continue doing any kind of remote work after school. But we've opened up all of our summer programming opened up this year. It's been oversubscribed in all the cases because a lot of other places have not been able to do that. They're oversubscribed also in part because the numbers have had to be less because of social distance, physical distance. But we've got youth development programming taking place in all of our 4 major modalities: primitive pursuits, which does outdoor camps. We have day programming. We have programming in community, live in multifamily residences, and then the 4-H clubs itself also reopened. So the pandemic response, what has it taught us? What are we thinking about for next year? Again, this greater remote emphasis on remote learning, but a key piece for us that we've been testing, doing a lot on, has been on follow-up support. So the remote learning is a great place to introduce people to things, but they still need periodic interventions, periodic ways for them, if we're talking about behavior change, ways for them to continue to be engaged. So we've been actually testing a number of different things. We've got some text message hotline, text messaging systems, programs that we're working with, where people coming out of a class say, yeah, I'd be interested actually in getting occasional text messages or regular text messages on a particular topic. So we've been testing that. We've been setting up with our phone system, we have the ability to set up hotlines pretty easily. So we can set up hotlines or information lines on any particular topic and monitor those both in real time as well as in delayed time. And then we've also begun testing sort of automated follow-up programs. So somebody can enlist in a type of, like has taken a class and they want follow-up sort of intervention. They can pick something, and then based on what they respond to after that, the programming itself continues to provide them responses. We can tweak them manually, but we can also just do it automatically with them. We do anticipate, this pretty much taught us, the food system efforts clearly point to a much greater need for resilience, a much greater need for reliance on local foods, or food chains, our supply chains. We clearly are going to spend a lot more time thinking about that and working on that. And Katie mentioned this too, relationship building, because we have recognized that our most effective efforts during the pandemic period have been because of strong relationships with organizations and individuals. And it's the glue. Those relationships are the glue that allow us, when stress, when we're under stress, we've got to be able to know that we can trust the other organization, the other individual we're working with. We all know this. And so it was underscored during this last few months, and it will be an even more, it's always been an integral part of what Cooperative Extension does. It will be even more intentional than it has been in the past. And then finally, with youth development, we really need to be thinking about how to encourage and strengthen our engagement outdoors, because if we are going to have, and we will have more pandemics. I mean, this is not the last one. We won't see another. It's not like we're going to wait for another 100 years before we have one. I don't know if you've noticed, but between 2000 and 2020, we've had 4. That's one major one, but we've had the potential for 3 others. We're increasing frequency with how frequently these viruses are crossing over to humans. So, we're going to really need to be thinking about how we can do much greater youth development effort engagement with the outdoors, where it's safer to be. That's my update to you for now.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Just let me ask a couple questions. I know it's late and I apologize to everybody about this, and I've got to be somewhere at 4 o'clock. So I guess there were problems with your facility that we discussed last year, and I wondered how the improvements and repairs to the facility have gone.
Well, we're actually the building, all of the damage has been repaired. So the roofs, we have new roofs on those pieces that were impacted, and we've redone much of the rooms themselves that were affected have been redone, with new flooring, new painting, new electric, new internet, et cetera, new phone system. Essentially, at this point, the one area that we're wrestling with right now is an upgrade to our HVAC system. So that's the sort of last major.
You and everybody else.
Ready?
You and everybody else.
Yeah. That's the last major item on our list. There are some smaller items, but that's the last major item on the list.
And I just want to add, since I sit on the facilities committee at the board level, we secured a $350,000 bond from the county. We used that not only for some of the roof repairs and some HVAC installation in part of the building, but also for more energy efficient windows throughout the facility. And the board is in a place where we're really thinking critically about how to make sure that our facilities are best maximized for the staff who are working there, which it's an interesting time to do that since people aren't in the buildings right now, but we are trying to have a long-term look at it, looking at the areas that are sensitive and really need immediate attention, but also thinking—
What, you froze?
Oh.
No, you're back.
Okay. Also thinking down the line at how to make our facility best suit the needs of our quite large staff. So that's something that's on our minds, and we haven't determined the best approach yet, but we're talking about that in conversation at the board level.
Okay, thank you. And then what's the status of your HR?
Okay.
My understanding was that you had lost some folks in HR.
Yes. So we had 2 people working in HR. We have replaced one of them, and we are at the stage where we anticipate, we're in the process now of discussing what position will look like for at least a half-time HR person. So we had an HR manager in the past, along with an HR sort of coordinator. So that the coordinator did much of the sort of HR database work, HR systems, information systems work. We have a person hired for that. Our OEM, Karen Yearwood, who is our operations manager, we hired a year and change ago, has been serving as our HR manager as we figured out what we would actually be doing with HR. And so we've been in discussions, actually Sarah and Tisa and I, along with folks from campus, have been in discussions about what an HR position would look like for us. And so we do expect sometime soon we will be developing that position and doing a search for some kind of HR manager, perhaps a half-time, perhaps full-time.
I had a question.
Okay, Dan, thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about, you haven't mentioned anything about staff furloughs or layoffs or hours reduction or anything like that. Can you tell us what's going on with that?
So we did not have any furloughs or layoffs or reductions in hours up until, other than people doing voluntary because of childcare issues. And so in those cases, almost all of them took the leave that they could take through the federal leave. But we have just begun with cuts in contracts from New York State. We've had a couple of people we've had to reduce hours. In some cases, so far I don't think we've laid off anybody so far, furloughed anybody. We have reduced hours for several people. What it's going to look like over the next couple of months, probably something like that. As a contract ends, we will be reducing hours. We, of course, have reduced hours for, because in the summertime, it's actually reasonably busy. A number of the people who might have had their hours reduced actually have been able to be shifted over to other projects. So we've actually not, I'd say, I don't think we've reduced hours for more than 5 people since the start of the pandemic, other than those people who voluntarily took hours reductions or leaves related to childcare and have been compensated through COVID.
Thank you.
Okay, I can think of a number of other questions because it's been so long since we've spoken. Ken, would it be all right if I sent you and Sarah an email? And because I really have to go, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Okay.
I wanted to add just 2 quick things from the board perspective. We're going through a strategic planning process this year, and it's in collaboration with board and staff members. And I know it's a weird time to do that, but part of it is because we anticipate that the upcoming years will be just as unpredictable. So we think some time for that. And then the second is that we have a couple current vacancies and are coming up on several more at the end of the year on our board. And so just putting a mention out there, if you have individuals that you think would community members who would be interested in serving on the CCE board or would be a good fit, to just get in touch with us. And I'm kind of the point person for that process.
Okay, thank you. It would help, I think, if I knew which areas. I know your board's kind of, you've got some at-large people, but then you've got people that are committed to particular program areas, and it would help to know what
we have a couple at-large seats that are open, so there doesn't need to be particular attachment or specialization with program areas there. And then I don't want to say incorrectly off the top of my head which of our program committees don't have representatives, but I could certainly share that in conversation.
I can tell you that the Environment Programs Committee is actually in the process right now of building up its numbers. So would welcome inquiries of interest on the part of anybody. So Pete, this is particularly relevant, obviously, to your committee here.
And I think nutrition too has some space for representation as well.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. And thank you all the members of the committee for hanging in there as long as you did. We're really making up for all those short meetings we had throughout the year. So I will officially declare this meeting adjourned, if that's okay.
Thank you all.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Ken and Sarah. Thanks, Deborah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.